This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 104, where we're looking at Spider-Man 2002, where we see Tobey Maguire. What's up, Defenders? Welcome back. This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 104, where we will be doing a spoiler-filled discussion on the one that kicked it all off, Spider-Man from 2002, where we saw Tobey Maguire get into spandex. Probably the best way of putting it. I'm one of your hosts, Chris.
I'm one of your hosts, Derek. Yeah, welcome back for Defenders for our Spider-Man coverage.
Yes, welcome to your friendly neighborhood podcast. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And yeah, as the guy said, this is our Summer of Spidey. So for those of you who are just joining us, we are going to do a Summer of Spidey, which is twofold. One, it's summertime, so unfortunately we're going to be on holidays. We're taking a short break. Some of us are traveling to unique destinations. But at the same time, we're also going to be covering the Spider-Man films, all leading to Spider-Man Homecoming, which releases in early July, depending on what country and where you're living.
Exactly. And this is a very special treat for one of our hosts, isn't it? Happy birthday, Chris.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All of our listeners, just so you know, Chris has just had a birthday just yesterday. We're recording our Spider-Man coverage, really because Chris is our biggest Spider-Man fan amongst all of our gang, right?
Absolutely. May all your web-slinging dreams come true.
So you want me to be bitten by a radioactive spider, gain powers. Perfect. I'm actually quite happy with that. That is my dreams.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone would like that. You suddenly get the Marvel apps as well.
Absolutely. But judging by this film, the cleaning bill for your room would be awful.
I know, the webs. There's one point you just... Yeah. Well, it depends on whether we're going... Are we going organic or are we going mechanized web swingers or web shooters? But that's a whole other story.
It certainly is.
So, let's kick into it. For those of you who have never listened to our podcast... The way that we usually do things these are very spoiler-filled. So we would ask you to go quickly check out the film first and then pop back to us if you want to listen to our dulcet tones. We're going to be reviewing the movies. So we're going to do Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 in the Tobey Maguire verse, if you want to call it that. We will then probably, around the launch date of Homecoming, release our spoiler-filled discussions on Homecoming. And if we can get enough time in, we're going to also wrap up the Summer of Spidey with the lovely Garfield Amazing Spider-Mans 1 and 2.
That's where Spider-Man goes after lasagna, isn't it?
It is, yes.
It is, yeah.
Well, in this one he goes out for pizza, so it's fine.
Yeah, nice.
I think Odie's in the other Spider-Man, and a guy called John.
Yes, that's true. I don't remember the Garfield ones very well, but what I do remember is Spider-Man 2002. This was an awesome film back at the time. These don't connect to Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming, obviously, as you probably know, connects to the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies like Captain America Civil War, where we saw the first appearance of the new Spider-Man. So we are going to fly through these. These are going to be much quicker podcasts than we normally do for our movies, but we're still really looking forward to talking about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if you have found us unexpectedly in anticipation for Homecoming, then please subscribe and leave a review if you want to over at Defenders TV Podcast /iTunes, or search Defenders TV Podcast on any other good podcast catcher. And of course, we'll have all our Defenders, Marvel Netflix Defenders stuff coming out in August. And of course, then there's our back catalogue of Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist as well.
Oh, yeah.
And we've also covered some of the other MCU films. So if you want to, in the lead up to Homecoming, if you want to check out some of the MCU coverage that we've done, feel free to check them out on our podcasts as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Highly recommend checking out our Civil War coverage to hear Chris's first thoughts of the new Spider-Man as well.
Yes.
I know. And now, in just a few mere weeks, I will get to see MCU Spider-Man in his truest form, in his homecoming, if you will, to the MCU, and with other characters, and Uncle Tony in all his blazing glory. But guys, I think it's time we kick off and bring everyone into what can only be described as the one that started it all. Some say X-Men started it all, but personally this was the one for me. The original, the je ne sais quoi, if you will, of Marvel superhero films that weren't even owned by Marvel at that point.
So Blade, then?
Yes.
No, Spider-Man. Yes. Yeah. Spider-Man 2002. You called it the Maguire-verse or the Tobey-verse a minute ago. Really, this movie is the Sam Raimi-verse. This is Sam Raimi, a director known for lots of really great horror films. If you've never seen Evil Dead, or Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness, go out, check them out. Really good horror films. He also did Drag Me to Hell, a fantastic horror film. Really creepy, really cool, really enjoyable. So this was really his vision. He was a huge comic book fan, as you can probably, we'll get into it, I'm sure, but as you can probably see from a lot of the shots that are taken from comic books and big arcs of Spider-Man and Peter Parker, Sam Raimi, a huge fan. So it was great to have him on board. I think everybody was very surprised that he jumped into doing superhero films after doing over 18s horror movies for years. I think we'll see what we think he got. The movie was written by David Koepp, so one writer on this movie. He's done some stunning films in the past. He did Mission Impossible. He did Jurassic Park, the first movie. He did the new Mummy that's just out in the cinema at the moment with Tom Cruise. So that one not getting the greatest of reviews. But
it is the one that was kicking off the whole Universal Dark universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I suppose. So again, he starts what this was planned to be a universe originally, the Spider-Man verse. So again, another. Actually, hold on. If we're saying that he's started 3, now 4 universes.
Yeah. Big franchises, definitely.
Yeah.
So the person that you want to have your franchise in the hands of, I suppose,
is God.
Pretty much,
creator of franchises,
creator of universes,
$1 billion blockbusters.
I like it. One note here as well: this was released in 2002, which was the 40th anniversary of Spider-Man, the creation of the Spider-Man character. So that was done as a big anniversary movie as well. The movie stars Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, James Franco, and Willem Dafoe. In all of the major roles. There's some interesting casting in this movie as well, so we'll get into it. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis of the episode?
Sure. Spider-Man centers on a student, Peter Parker, played by Tobey Maguire, who, after being bitten by a genetically altered spider, gains superhuman strength and the spider-like ability to cling to any surface. He vows to use his abilities to fight crime with the mantra, "With great power comes great responsibility," after the death of his beloved Uncle Ben. Peter begins to experiment with his new powers just as a green menace called Green Goblin begins to terrorize New York.
Let's kick off into our top 5. For those of you who are, guys, again, just joining us for the way, or this is being your first podcast, we usually pick our top 5 points, discuss them. Typically when we were covering the Netflix universe, it would just be what we think the top 5 points are of that episode. But with this film, we're probably going to shake things up a bit, just because, again, you guys know a lot of this already, so we want to just focus on. So we're going to talk about the origin, the villain, supporting characters, then we'll go into character arc, and then, as always, tie it up with a beautiful bow on the final battle.
Oh, yes.
So that being the case, guys, do we want to talk about the origin?
Yeah.
And I think, John, you put it best when you said this.
The origin, yes. It's the thing we've seen a million times before. But actually, I loved it. I mean, I loved this film when it came out. It really gave me a lot of goosebumps. It just felt so spectacular. Certainly, given the Punisher, Blade, and all that, the previous sort of Marvel properties that had been on were much more kind of to characters which obviously not as big, but this was epic. It really was, and I liked having the origin. Again, I think it's important to have that origin,
Absolutely.
even though it's a really well-known one if you read comic books and so on. And I think I know I'd said the origin repeated itself somewhat, but it's not really that. It's more to do with maybe the structure of these 3 films that we're about to look at. It is very much sort of, okay, it's villains and big boss fights ultimately. And I suppose the way superhero films have gone now with the MCUing of the verse, the Marvelverse, it really, they're much more conscious of that, I think, because certainly maybe there was a little fatigue by 3, but I absolutely loved this opening. It was good to see it sort of given new life, I think, ultimately. And
like, it's something that's told in the original comic books in kind of a little panel. It's basically, Peter Parker, young nerdy kid, has no luck with the girls, gets bitten by a radioactive spider, gets spider powers. It's a really simple story of the origin of the character, and then he went on to essentially 60 odd years of having Spider-Man as being probably the biggest, most recognizable superhero, I would say.
He's up there with Spider-Man, Superman, and Batman.
Yeah,
very
really
much
is.
so.
Big time.
Yeah.
And of course, we have the start, literally, of the Marvel abs in this.
Yeah,
as well.
It's true. The spider bite gave me abs.
Yeah,
it's just like what? Like we're pretty sure. Then the other Chris's in the universe got spider bites as well.
Oh yeah,
but they're just hiding them better. That's the secret to this. Basically, Raimi built a machine that when you get bitten by something, you get abs, and it's just continued on for years.
Oh yeah,
exactly. It gave male insecurities about their physical form and it continues to this day.
To this day.
Yeah, thanks, Marvel.
Yeah.
I keep hanging around in really dark rooms with webs all over them, just trying to get abs. But it never works.
I'm kind of turning into Jessica Jones more than anyone with abs. I'm getting my bra going.
Chris, what did you think of the characterization of the origin in this film?
So I can tell you what I originally thought, and then again with this rewatching.
Yeah.
So it's an origin of how you thought about the origin.
Yes, it is. It's the origin of the origin of the origin.
Like it.
Wow, try saying that 3 times fast. So basically, when I first watched this film, I remember being a bit miffed, if you will, because they took some liberties with the overall kind of the origin as well as a total. In that, so there was no genetically enhanced spider being made with it. It was basically that it was they went, and again, it wasn't in a beautiful library where there was a science machine. There was the original panels, as you said, made it beautiful, which was there was this energy conductor, there was 2 balls with a lightning kind of going through some kind of reaction, and a spider just happens to go down through the beam and then lands on Peter as he takes the photo. Mm-hmm. They changed this, and now basically this was the origin of the cinematic kind of scripting of changing slight tweaks to comic books. So the original fan of me when I first watched this went, "Oh my god, how could they do this?" And we'll get the bit where so basically Sam Raimi he took a lot of flack on this film for the organic web shooters.
Oh yeah.
Which we can kind of jump into quickly now. But he made a very fair point. So in the comic books, Peter Parker does not have organic web shooters. He basically is a science genius who, after getting these powers, decides to and figures out a way of creating the actual webs.
Yeah.
And then Sam Raimi, in interviews, when he was kind of getting a lot of flack for deciding to go with organic web shooters, went, "Look, this is a 16-year-old. You're expecting me to believe, and our audience to believe, that he is such a genius that he came up with something that multi-billion-dollar companies couldn't come up with in his basement when he's poor."
Yeah.
And when you say that, you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that actually makes okay."
It does make total logical sense. Yeah.
Fair point. I will take you on that. So for me, the first time watching it, I was very much like, "Oh, they're changing everything." But now I kind of seen it, and the rewatching kind of. It gave me those chills. This was the first. This was the origin of origin stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it makes sense as well, given the spider and how he gets the powers, that he would get some, all the other physical manifestations of that bite and what happens to his body. That's conceivably something that could happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah. I didn't mind the organic web slingers, and I suppose
I think it was the initial nerd outrage in me. How dare this man change things? But So let's go on from outside of the spider bite. Let's move on to the costume and the actual the cause of him becoming a vigilante.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
The costume.
Yeah.
That lovely scene.
If there's anything more unbelievable in this movie than a man having organic web shooters, it's that this kid has got that costume. There's no explanation for where he goes from getting stuff that he could probably buy on eBay and then changes it up into this amazing looking costume.
I suppose we're just expected to believe that Tony Stark was somewhere in the background.
Probably.
And that Tony didn't have the rights to him, but he did something. Or maybe he snuck into Harry Osborn's lab and, or his dad's lab and just cooked something up, you know. Or he just went lycra.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my sister's a seamstress, and we were when I started the rewatching, she was there, and she has such an issue with this piece because it was like, so do you know how hard it is to work with that kind of spandex that they made? So it was like going, like, if he's not properly trained, he would have gone through reams of it. And you're going, actually, yeah, probably. But fair point. Look, the spider bite gave him delicate touch enough that he could sew lycra.
Maybe it's web. Dyed web, and he just...
There we go, yeah.
You know?
There you go, we have solved the problem. But yes, obviously what drives him into crime fighting as well, Chris, yeah.
Yeah, so this always got me. This is probably one of the most recognised... It has become an American or a pop culture adage or a kind of saying throughout the years because of this film and because of actually Spider-Man. So I'm hoping you guys have watched it. So we see the whole the wrestling ring, we see, which is fantastic, with like that whole piece where he stands aside as a thief, runs by him and says, well, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
Because he was just given that by the wrestling promoter himself. So he kind of says, well, look, like, I'm not going to put myself out there. We then cut to poor Uncle Ben, which was this was done that it was about a carjacking, again a slight liberty, but overall it didn't change things too much. And poor Peter then runs to the aid of the dying Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Now this scene always gives me chills because this is the one where everyone has gifted to 1,000,000 degrees, where it's just a single tear rolling down Tobey Maguire's face. But then it turns to anger as he decides to run after this ragamuffin who has carjacked and killed Uncle Ben. This for me is a brilliant piece.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it teaches that with great power comes great responsibility. And this is that's the line that I think has, now you could say that to anyone, and they'll know that they'll either know how to finish it and know it comes from Spider-Man, or they'll at least know how to finish it. It's become such pop culture.
Absolutely.
It's so iconic that it's now used when in a lot of origin stories of super people or super characters. When people are reviewing them, they kind of go, well, then they got the powers, and of course with great power comes great responsibility. It's how it's almost a description of the entire superhero genre.
Yeah.
It's
so iconic. I mean, it is, and in some ways it's like it's almost like Romeo and Juliet or something like that in terms of what it sets up and the template that it gives. You know, it's become so iconic. You know, you love it or you hate it, or you get, you know, it's a victim of its own success sometimes in comics. It's like, certainly when you're introducing new comics, you know, but then you get the spin on it from other characters. But it's such a good way of setting up this young character of Peter Parker with the death of his Uncle Ben, and obviously what comes after as well with Aunt May as well. It is, you know, it just adds layers to that trauma that has, and the advice though that has been given to him with that like iconic line. Like I really think as well, just quickly, like Rosemary Harris, I thought she was brilliant as May Parker.
Yeah.
As well. Like she really fitted that role. I felt it's so natural. I like that interplay as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's perfect, because that kind of brings us on to the kind of next point, which is these supporting characters. The Uncle Bens, the Aunt Mays, the Harry Osborns, the Mary Jane Watsons. They are essential. Sorry, and this is point 2, ladies and gentlemen who are listening to us on the podcast. Spider-Man's whole universe, his whole duality is that he is Peter Parker as much as he is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So without Peter Parker, and we see this a lot in the actual second film, which we'll be releasing in the coming weeks when we review it. Without one, there is no other.
Yeah.
Without Spider-Man, there is no Peter Parker. Without Peter Parker, there is no Spider-Man. And Uncle Ben and Aunt May, they are central to his they are essential to who he is, because when Uncle Ben dies and leaves him with this mantra, it changes him and charges him to go forward and become this crime fighting vigilante.
Absolutely.
But then, as John said, the Aunt May character is the widow. Becomes the surrogate mother with a degree, if you want to call it that, of she will always there to emotionally support him as things get rough.
Yeah, absolutely. She's not given enough credit in these films or in the comics really early on as being the one that he needs to have in his life, someone that's driving him constantly as a young kid, going through things he's never thought he would ever go through, and even without her knowing that he's Spider-Man, she's able to help him through some really tough times. And yeah, I think she plays the part great in this first film. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's bring this on to another tiger in the Spider-Man verse, Mary Jane Watson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, again, MJ. I always thought this was really interesting when they started this one. They never went with Gwen Stacy.
That's right.
In these ones, which I always thought was a different way of doing it. For our comic book fans, you'll know and understand what I'm talking about. For those who don't, Gwen Stacy was the original girlfriend, the girl next door for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Mary Jane Watson wasn't introduced till quite later on in the I think it was the late 70s, early 80s. She was there, but she was not the romantic interest.
Yeah.
It was after, spoiler alert, Gwen Stacy dies in the comic books that that paved the way for the opening for MJ to go after Peter. So I always thought this was a strange one to go after with or to use within one of these origins, but it does make sense when you kind of break it down that she is like the redheaded how do you call it, dreamer who wants to be an actress. Again, is another part of Peter's life, and it makes sense that where they wanted to build this universe and go with it, to have her there.
Like she is all in the comic books at the time. Definitely, she was an iconic figure in the Spider-Verse. I think at that stage, sadly, Gwen Stacy probably been forgotten a little bit. The storyline of Gwen Stacy, she's one of the characters that never came back early on, or at the time anyway. And Mary Jane Watson had become a huge figure in the comic book. She had been married to Peter in the comic book. So it feels like when you do a movie, you do pick a character that's kind of a big iconic character. They have loads of history together and loads of storylines to tell. So I think they did choose the right character in bringing in Mary Jane.
Definitely, yeah. And they have a considerable history over these 3 films.
Yeah, certainly.
Oh wow!
I did like her storyline as well. The fact that she's going out with the high school jock who's always beating up Peter. She lives next door to Peter, and she's being told that she's trash every day. He can overhear her being shouted at all the time. So he actually knows her far better than her boyfriend does as well. So.
Yeah, like this. I think this is the strongest film out of the 3 for MJ. I think you really get a sense of where she's coming from. What she's being told she's trash. She's trying to build. She's dating a rich jock. She dreams of Broadway, being an actress and so on. You see the aspiration. I think this film really, I think gives her background, gives her reason in this universe, and her relationship with Peter Parker really, really well. I think it slightly degenerates over Spider-Man 2 and 3, to be honest, and it's not the actress's fault. I think it's the writing. It becomes massively stereotypical, I think. But I think in this film, she's really, really good. And even just the relationship with Harry Osborn as well, that sort of triangle, I think is really good. And that's one of the neat things I like that moves through actually all three films, is these three high school friends obviously going in different directions and being torn apart, brought back together, and so on. It's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that is the heart of the movie. So the other major character is Harry Osborn, as you mentioned. So Harry as Peter's best friend, Chris.
Yeah. So I always loved Harry as a character. Just in that he was such a different. He was on the different side of the tracks to Peter.
Yeah.
So he is the son of the billionaire that is Norman Osborn, yet he has a wild streak and has been kicked out of every private school there is, and ends up, because of where they're living, in the same borough or public school as Peter. But because they are both outcasts, one being so rich and one being so poor and nerdy, they form this kind of friendship and this banter. And Tobey Maguire and James Franco kind of really portray these two characters quite well in the kind of banter they back and forth, like very much the sibling brother kind of relationship.
Yeah,
that there is that kind of, I'll look out for you, you look out for me. Which, as you kind of does deteriorate over the course of films, and then is regrown and then deteriorates again, as kind of John mentioned.
Yeah.
But I love Harry Osborn in this.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the jealousy between Harry and Peter as well. So they are best friends. They have developed a very close relationship. But I like the jealousy between Harry and Peter when Peter starts to get into the good graces of Norman Osborn, the other major character in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, Willem Dafoe is always does crazy well. Loved his portrayal of Norman Osborn sort of becoming unhinged as he's exposed to that serum where he turns into, obviously, the crazy psychotic Green Goblin. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and that's kind of our big third point, is obviously the villain. So we've done the hero, we've done the supporting characters, and the villain of this piece is Green Goblin. So a great choice from the comic books, a huge character in Spider-Man mythology. He's been around for decades, always popping back up. But this is Norman Osborn as his creation and his origin. What do you think of the origin and story of him?
So for me, this was an interesting. So it's a different take. It's actually pulled from, I believe it was pulled from the Ultimate Universe,
right?
In the style that it was given, in that it was a serum that gave him, and actually they don't even touch on it. It was supposed to have been Super Soldier Serum.
Of course.
Failed, of course, because that's who everyone wants to be Captain America. But I did like this. I liked him being the almost mad scientist, if you will.
Yeah.
Kind of pushing back on a lot of it, going, well, it's ready for human testing. Well, it's not, but we'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
I'll test it on myself. Willem Dafoe plays the character fantastically. The scene where he jumps from the glass and kind of grabs the neck of the doctor after just inhaling all the serum,
yes,
and coming back to life is fantastic.
And again, it speaks to the sensibilities of a horror director here.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You cast someone like Willem Dafoe when you want to scare the hell out of your audience, and Willem Dafoe does a great job. I think the memes of Willem Dafoe started at this point onwards, when he became the scariest thing you can see in a film.
Yeah, and he's able to pull off the duality that is supposed to be the Green Goblin.
I really think that just gave him two scripts and asked one of his personalities to read one and one to read the other.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And
it
never
makes
actually met.
No, and they didn't actually even film the scenes at the same time, just changing cameras. It was just one. It was just two different takes.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, that scene where he's in his mansion on up one of the upper floors, and they're looking at the mirror. So you have the camera panned at the two different mirrors, and then you see Willem Dafoe talking to himself, but in these two different voices, two different styles. Like, that is why you cast that actor as this kind of psychotic, broken, intellectual genius. I would have enjoyed. So again, this is being the comic book cynic in me. In this, again, it's an origin. I get it, but in the comic books, Norman Osborn is so. The duality is gone at this point in where we are in comic books today. He is just evil, psychotic, but he's able to be that really amazing businessman, front man, have like everyone think he's normal in the comic books. And I would have loved that, where except like you only see that at the very end of the final battle, where the evil, psychotic Green Goblin is able to make his voice and seem like the original Norman Osborn.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you think of the character arc? Let's move on to point 4. So obviously we've talked about all the characters now, but the actual journey of Peter from the beginning when he gets the powers to going through that development, learning about the idea of with great power comes great responsibility, and then having to take on this huge threat to the city of New York.
I love the fun way that they treated him, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, really experimenting with his newfound powers. So cool. Like, it's what everyone would do, and I thought they captured that really, really well. And then, obviously, it just gets darker and darker, and I think that's really down to just how interwoven these characters are in this first film, and particularly that Norman has this soft spot for Peter. It's there is that kind of idea that he's the son he would have wanted, because he's he enjoys his science, so you could see him fit into the company. He feels like Harry is just being like annoying and so on, but obviously then that he becomes suspicious of Peter becomes suspicious of him, and obviously moving through to the finale, but there's that complication of the fact that they know one another, and Peter is best friends with Harry, and I think that just is so really good. It just adds different layers to their confrontation in that final battle. Absolutely. And I think it really adds to the arc that Peter has to go through, because it's much more conflicted. It's much more dangerous for him because of his friends and who the Green Goblin is. I actually really like the fact that the Green Goblin does offer him to join him. Like, that it's not set that Peter necessarily will follow Uncle Ben's kind of wisdom that has been offered to him, that there is a chance that he will go a different journey. I mean, it's obviously a very slim chance, given the knowledge of the character, but it's still, it just adds a little bit extra, and I think that's what's great about the arc in this film for Peter.
Yeah, and then I suppose I'm going to come in on this one. So for me, this character arc is tried and tested in so many ways. It's the training montage, if you will, of that was popular in the 80s. I still got chilled seeing that first scene where he starts climbing up the wall. Tentatively, he just sees the spider, the kind of spider talons come out of his fingertips, and then he's slowly crawling up faster and faster, and he starts like that. For me, was still like, imagine being. I suppose you don't have to imagine. Some of our listeners were the same as me. A child sitting in the cinema watching this, and you're like, "Oh my god, they've made this character I love come to life on screen." And get his character. Like, I know, like rewatching the films, like they are dated, and that's fine. Yeah. Like even the graphics are dated, but the story arc is. The character arc itself is what makes this film special. Yeah. It's you basically have given someone you give him tragedy, and he either breaks and uses this power for evil, or you give him tragedy and he becomes the hero. And that is what the two characters are. So the tragedy of nearly losing his business and giving him powers causes psychosis and causes the evil to be ignited in the Green Goblin, where he uses that power to then go and kill the rest of the board of directors and all this type of thing. But then you give power and tragedy to a child who has been pushed and taught that, like, with great power comes responsibility, that you must help the weak. And that arc then kind of propels Spider-Man through to become this the friendly neighborhood New York Spider-Man. Like, I don't know, he starts with the friendly neighborhood, and then you're kind of going, well, you're actually all of Manhattan and Brooklyn, so pretty much New York Island, let's just say that. So all of the supporting New York upper state is your area.
He's in all of their neighborhoods.
Yeah, exactly. He's everyone's neighborhood. But what it comes down to is that this character then goes on the journey of he gets to a point where everyone loves him, and then you have the supporting character, which we haven't talked about much in this one, probably a lot more in the second one, J. Jonah Jameson, who feels that in order to, if someone is becoming too big for their britches, they must be tore down. And he literally tears down Spider-Man
while chewing up the scenery. Amazing character.
Yes. And I think it's just fantastic because it's so that he's given, Spider-Man has said that they don't love him. They don't want him to be there. A nice tidbit of information is, because this film was released after September 11th, the September 11th attacks in New York, there was a reshot where we see the people of New York throwing the garbage at the Green Goblin, and he goes, "They're one of us." That was actually added in later. Because they wanted to show the unity of people of New York.
Absolutely.
Same with the closing scene where Spider-Man is attached to the flagpole with the picture of the flag of the United States. That was added later again to show that how much of a unifying character he can be for New York.
Absolutely.
And I think that's it. He gets to a point where he knows he's not loved by everyone, but majority of the people of who he looks after, the neighborhood, care for him. They know he's doing right. And that's kind of where we get to with Spider-Man. He kind of goes from a nothing to something. And I think that's kind of like, Derek, do you have anything on this, or do you want to move to the kind of final battle?
I think we need to move to the final battle, really. Like you're absolutely right. This character has a great arc. You can do the hero arc. It's a very standard arc, as you said, Chris. But you can do it with joy, and you can do it with love. And I really think Tobey Maguire embodies that image of a kid getting superpowers and just being completely joyous. I love even just that little touch where he's trying to get to fire the web shooters, which he knows he can shoot them, but he's using all of the words from the DC comics. Did you notice that? It's like he's using Shazam to try and throw them out.
Up and away.
Yeah, he's trying to use each of the things he's probably read in the comic books he's read. It's kind of cool. It just ties him to being a grounded kid. But yeah, the arc is fantastic. But there's obviously going to be a big battle at the end. There's always going to be pitting the villain against the hero at the end. I like how separated they keep Peter's storyline from Norman Osborn's storyline throughout the film. It's only really about the last 25 minutes of the movie where the two of them start to go up against each other, which I think is a really good choice for the film. Then you can have two completely separate origin stories and have them culminate in one big battle at the end. I do think that is a bit of a weird moment when Norman asks Peter to join him. It's kind of an odd thing. I can't really see how he would join him, but it's kind of, you're powered, I'm also powered, why don't we take over the city? Okay, didn't expect that he would ever do it.
No, but I mean, I think
he is crazy.
He's crazy, but he's also that, because he is, he's increasingly suspicious and then realizes that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, there's that element where he knows him. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't you? But it's just that the serum that he has used obviously has turned him mental. But I think even with that, the idea that the final battle ends with Spider-Man bringing Norman back to his apartment and laying him on the couch. Unfortunately for him, Harry walks in, sees that it is Spider-Man that's killed his father, or so he thinks. But that is just, if you think of final big boss battles, that kind of idea is something kind of really interesting. Mm-hmm. That tie-in of these central characters through just knowing each other in day-to-day life kind of thing. And I really, then obviously, it jump boards everything off for Harry and his kind of obsession then with the Spider-Man and just the relationship with Peter Parker. So I really like the idea that, it was between these two fighting it out, but ultimately, again, that Peter, because of the mantra, because of what he's bringing to being Spider-Man, and because he knows Norman, that he decides to, bring him back to his home to lay him down. That's a fairly personal moment, I think, for a big final battle, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah,
again, fundamental to the Spider-Man character. He has to be real. He has to feel like somebody that is in your local neighborhood. So the touch of him personally knowing the Green Goblin and taking him back to his son is it's the right impulse for the film, definitely.
Yeah. So for me, I'm still torn about this film, the ending.
How about the battle itself? So it's
the battle. That's the issue I have.
So it's a small enough battle. If you compare it against something like the Avengers, which takes place in New York City as well, and that is things coming out of space to destroy the entire city, and a bomb about to go off, nuclear bomb about to go off to kill the entire city. So this is a much smaller battle.
Yes, yeah, it really is. I can see your point there. For me, it was more the choice of dangling the school children versus MJ. Mm-hmm. Like it's like that was pretty much for me. Oh my god, that's the culmination. Like, oh my god, he's gonna save and that amazing scene where he catches both of them, and then it dragged on for a bit, and then they added that scene in, and then it's okay. Let's go fight in this. For some reason, there's an abandoned, broken building, like factory where they can that's overgrown in New York prime real estate.
Yeah.
So forget about that. It was basically
a fantasy film.
Yeah, exactly. It's the two of them beating up on each other so much on this. Like it went on for me slightly too long, but I still love it in that. Okay, I love it and I hate it. I think is probably this is very Marmite-y for me.
Right.
Seeing Spider-Man be torn up, and then that image of him becoming the battle-torn Spider-Man, where his mask is half ripped and all that, all culminating with a flip over a speeding glider, and it's over. That for me was just like, oh great, oh wow, okay. Like you basically have killed off for me what I considered one of the biggest characters in the Spider-Man universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was bold for what Raimi did, but it stopped so much potential for the number 2 and 3,
right?
Where you could have had the Norman Osborn character there.
Yeah. But kind of cool that they did set up that we will possibly be getting Harry in that role. That's a good choice as well.
Yeah.
And again, this is a death of a villain. This doesn't happen very often anymore. There's usually people caught now.
Yeah.
But the death of the villain, and then the only person that witnessed it is Peter Parker's Spider-Man. He's the only person that witnessed the actual death. So leading to Harry thinking he's the one that murdered his father, which is a great idea.
And where did he put all the goblin stuff? That's never answered, by the way. He just strips him off the goblin stuff.
No, it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe not. Sorry, I know what you mean. After the battle, where did he put the...
Yes, exactly.
The outfit. Hopefully he burnt it in hell. That is one of the worst costumes I have ever seen in one of these movies.
That is true.
I hate the Goblin costume. Yeah. And I know it was done with the help of Willem Dafoe. He was really into the idea of having a fully armoured Green Goblin. It still doesn't explain that helmet.
Oh my god!
I don't understand. I get the idea of him being fully armoured. That makes total sense. But that helmet, where you can kind of see his face through the grill sometimes, I don't know. It's a very odd idea for me. So hopefully that's where Peter threw it in hell.
Yes, hopefully. But that's perfect. That brings us on just some notes, guys. So that's our top 5. I wanted to. There's 2 beautiful kind of pieces for me in this, that kind of show why I like Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. The first is the scene where he catches Mary MJ and her lunch trays.
Yeah.
So that's not CG'd. That was basically, there was 156 takes of Tobey Maguire with a tray and a sticky substance trying to catch all of them. And he did it after 157.
That is amazing. Amazing.
It's tantric. It's really is tantric.
You would kind of give up after about 20 takes and go, can we not just draw in this stuff with the CGI budget at all, or just skip the scene, right? No, 156 takes. Let's keep going.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Fantastic.
And then Tobey Maguire started getting a lot of sinus problems in this film.
Right.
Because of the infamous upside down kissing scene.
Of course, yes.
Which, because basically of the huge amount of downpour in the rain, it started going into his sinuses and up his nose.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And so he started getting really sick from the period of when they filmed that. But obviously that is now an infamous or very famous, or I probably should say infamous, scene, because it has been... So many other films have you taken it as a funny trope. It is used and called back to in each of the 2 other films.
Yeah.
There is some form of upside down kissing. But yeah, I thought it was so funny that Tobey Maguire started getting so sick for that one scene that Sam Raimi thought was terrible and has become now so big and so well known.
It's iconic. I'm so glad he went through.
And it's true. He didn't catch anything from Kirsten Dunst in that scene.
No cooties. It was the rain.
Exactly.
One of the things for my notes that I wanted to talk about was the cameos, because these movies are well known for their cameos.
Yeah.
We did have Stan Lee.
Oh, yeah.
We did have Stan Lee in X-Men, but as John intimated there, one of the biggest cameos in this for me as a WWF fan from the 80s was the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I really wanted Ric Flair to come in as well. Woo! I'd just do the great face off with Macho Man and Ric Flair.
But it's great to see. Great to see Randy Savage in there as well. One of the other ones, obviously, as it's a Sam Raimi movie, and he was moving from the small time of Evil Dead movies, working with the main star of his movies, Bruce Campbell. He decided to take Bruce Campbell over, and Bruce Campbell gets a cameo in every movie. It's like as if he's Sam Raimi's Stan Lee, so he gets a cameo, and a pretty sizable one in each one. He's the stage announcer in the ring in this movie, if you don't know who he is. So he gets his little moment in the sun there. And we also get a very heroic moment with Stan Lee, where he gets to save one of the young kids at the one of the battles where there's it's the parade, isn't it?
It's the parade, the balcony collapsing and stuff. Yeah,
and Stan Lee gets to save one of the kids in there, so he gets a heroic scene as his cameo this time, which is quite cool. Not just a gag.
And of course we have Danny Elfman on violins, and ghostly voices going. Oh.
I know, you could definitely tell it was a Danny Elfman.
Definitely.
Probably a
very
Batman
much so.
in it, or
Tim Burton, some character, Beetlejuice.
Yeah. Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah. Jack Pumpkin.
Yeah.
Skin thingy from that one. Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, and then I suppose this was for me, and I suppose the final note that before we go into whether we defend these ones is these had no post-credit stings.
That's right.
Yeah, thank goodness. I suppose now, post-credit scenes are brilliant, but they're a slight overload, certainly after Guardians of the Galaxy. So this was kind of refreshing that it didn't have one when watching it back, because we did check, and it was like, oh no, it didn't have one. That's really novel now.
Yeah, exactly. I can't even remember which was one of the first ones to bring in the post-credit. I'm assuming it was Iron Man 1 by Jon Favreau. But we'll need to double check that. But this for me was the interesting piece, because it was like, they didn't set up a second film. They just kind of let it go, and it was like, well, you may get to see things happen, but you may not.
Yeah.
Wait and see.
Exactly. The post-credit things were almost things that happened at the end of the film, things that they would traditionally have. Things like the body of Norman Osborn being delivered back, Harry finding it and blaming Peter for it. That would have been that's a Marvel post-credit scene, isn't it?
Yeah.
And end on the high of Peter winning, and then you have something in the post-credits that lead to the next film. So that's what I think would have been the post-credit scene if there was going to be one.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's do this. Let's see whether we defend Spider-Man 2002 by Sam Raimi. Derek, do you defend this film?
Absolutely defend this film. This is a classic to me. This is, it really delivered on everything I wanted this movie to deliver, and I can't unfortunately separate out the feeling that was there when I saw the movie the first time and the feeling that's there now when I see it in the light of the rest of the films. It's not as great as I remember it, don't get me wrong, but it's still a classic. There's some brilliant things in here. Honestly, I think the only real missteps in the film, one is the costume for Green Goblin, which I thought could have been better. And the second thing is that they took Peter Parker out of high school in the first hour of the movie and set him on the path to being an adult and going to find work. That's the only thing that is a bit of a drag, especially knowing there's going to be 2 more movies where he's not in high school. There's so many stories that are there for him. I think that's why they're doing the homecoming idea, the idea that Spider-Man's going back to high school now, is because they skipped so much by pulling him out of high school. This is something that Stan Lee always says about the character. The character was supposed to be for kids who were 14, 15 years old to identify with, and the minute you get him trying to get a job and get an apartment and a place to live, it does take a bit out of the character. But I think the casting in this is great. I think the interplay between the characters is great, and the writing around all of them forming together a really personal story in the superhero genre, I think, is really, really good. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that one. John, do you defend this film?
Oh, I do. I do defend this. I will give it 4 Uncle Ben's rice out of 5. For me...
How did we get through the whole podcast without Uncle Ben's rice?
This really is... I think I agree with Derek. It's a classic. I remember seeing it in the cinema. I bowled over. I loved the cinematic and the scope and just the massiveness of it. I mean, again, the CGI looks a bit ropey now, but at the time, seeing Spider-Man slinging through the skyscraper jungle of Manhattan and New York, absolutely phenomenal. I love the fact that it was Norman Osborn that was one of the main characters, his villain. I loved how it all connected in with Harry, with MJ. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed that, I think, as Uncle Ben and Aunt May, in terms of that origin and how that really sets Peter Parker onto Spider-Man. I just think it's really, really good. I mean, and I think similarly with Derek as well, that the 2 aspects with regards to the Green Goblin costume and probably that idea. Although for me, I don't mind him coming out of high school, but I can see how that potentially changes the dynamics of this character. And I mean, again, I think for Sam Raimi, it's a bit like with, this is a Ditko creation with Stan Lee. The other big one, obviously, Doctor Strange. But you can see the love that Raimi has for this character. Absolutely. In how he treats him, how he frames him, how he makes it really iconic, from being on the side of a skyscraper to, tonguing MJ in the rain. All of that kind of stuff, is really, really, just a great love letter to this character. And I think the same way, say, that Scott Derrickson did with Strange.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I think, who cares with my view? Young Christoph, do you defend this Spider-Man movie, number 1?
I do, guys. I so do. And John, thank you for bringing up Strange. We went a whole 2 episodes of this podcast without getting a Strange reference, but all roads lead to Strange. But that's true. So Ditko making Spider-Man with Stan Lee on this was like... This character has just been such a big part. Well, for me, growing up, but not for many other people, including Raimi. So, as you said, I couldn't say about it. This is a love letter. It's a love letter to the origin, to a character was always going to have this duality of who he is, and that's why we get these 2. Well, we actually get 3 stories. You get the Goblin story, the Peter Parker story, and the Spider-Man origin. Mm-hmm. And it continues that way. There was originally some backlash around Tobey Maguire being cast as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And I think this settled it as being no. This he did embody, at that point in time, he embodied who Spider-Man was.
Absolutely.
Leaving high school, going into his first foray into the Daily Bugle, etc. And I loved it. Like, I can't say much more. Like, seeing Spider-Man crawling and swinging for the first time on... Now, I'm not talking the 60s Spider-Man or the Japanese Spider-Man live action. Yeah, they're two different things altogether. But overall, this was the first big piece for me, and I loved it. I can't say anything more.
Excellent. Good way to spend your birthday, Chris.
Yes, it was a beautiful way to spend my birthday.
Yes, Chris, you've loved it. You can't unlove it.
Yes, it's now forever in history because we've recorded it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, fellow Defenders. Really good to have you back with us for this episode of our Defenders TV podcast. If you want to join us and talk about Spider-Man or anything else coming up to the release of Spider-Man Homecoming or any of our episodes so far, just send us some feedback to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com or pop over and join us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/DefendersTVPodcast. You can also leave us a voicemail over on our website at defenderstvpodcast.com. A little voicemail button over on the right hand side if you want to share your thoughts about any of the Spider-Man movies in the Tobey Maguire section or in the Andrew Garfield section, or when you get up to see Homecoming, you can share your thoughts about that as well.
Thank you very much. So don't forget, subscribe to us at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. Rate us and leave a review. And also, if you are on any good and evil swinging in the neighborhood of a podcast, Android podcast catcher, I should say, don't forget you can get us there as well, and you can leave reviews for us too. Guys, we're going to be back with Spider-Man 2 to continue our Summer of Spidey retrospective with all things leading not too strange, but to Spider-Man Homecoming in early July. And more importantly, as much as I love my Spider-Man, in truth, we are barreling towards the Defenders, which releases worldwide on the 18th of August. So make sure you are caught up on all of our other podcasts by that. They still have a couple of months. So make sure you fully understand our thoughts, loves, and reasons on Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Daredevil.
Absolutely.
So that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us as always. And we will be back for Spider-Man 2 in our Summer of Spidey retrospective as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for listening, and we will speak with you next time.
Talk to you next time, Spidey friends.
Signing off.
Bye.
Better than signing off, Chris. Come on.
No, he says it in the animated series. Yeah, I think he said it. I don't know. I think it was something better.
Chris is swinging off into the distance on his webs.
Yes, webs. Good. Can we use that? Like, just that. Because now people just listen to me going like this now and going, oh, that's weird. Bye, guys. There, you got some extra outtakes out of us before we even go.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.